Okay, so first thing I actually want to do is point out to you guys that spring registration is open. Kind of snuck up on me. Had students emailing me asking questions about classes I'm teaching in the spring. I guess it's already up. So go on, if you haven't already, take a look at what's being offered. And I'm trying to think if there's, most of you are accounting specialist students, so each of these classes you will need to take at some point. If you have any questions about any of them, let me know. I can tell you, I mean, the classes I'm teaching are, where are we here? Way down, so I'm teaching this class again. Payroll certification review, which is a class that kind of focuses on that. We had spoken early on in the semester, right at the beginning, about the American Payroll Association and the certifications that they offer. That payroll certification review, which is a 2-credit class, it is fully online, and it starts, I think it's it's an early start. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Yeah, it ends by the end of March. So it kind of focuses more on the material that is offered in that exam. So if that's something, it's one of the electives in the program. There are 3 electives: the payroll certification review, the VITA class, which is the volunteer income tax assistance class. If you're interested in income taxes, you do need to take the income tax accounting class before you can take VITA. And that VITA class is only offered in the spring. Obviously, that's the only time that's tax season, and you do actually prepare tax returns for real clients in that class. So that VITA class is an elective, and then the 3rd elective is if you do an internship. So those are the 3 electives that are offered. So like I said, that payroll certification review is one of those. What else we got going on here? So income tax accounting, it is only offered online in the spring. I recommend, so I'm not going to discourage you from taking it online, but if you have absolutely no experience with income tax, this class is super hard to take online. I mean, it's an intense class. Tyler's in that class right now. I know I've got another student in here, Margaret, who's also in that class right now. They can attest to the fact that the material is pretty intense. So not to discourage you from taking it online if that's what suits you, but like I said, if you don't have any background in tax, you've never done your own tax return, you don't know anything, my recommendation for students is always, if that's your background, you probably need to take it in person, or at least virtual, which is in the fall. I offer it in person here at Ankeny, and then I also have a virtual class that's offered, it's through Urban Campus, so we meet online, but it's the actual scheduled class. Let's see what else, and then also, so I'm teaching that VITA class, which is called Tax Assistance Institute. Okay, lots of other classes as well, QuickBooks, Excel classes. We've got, so the intro, essentially intro, this is like an intro class to Excel for entrepreneurs, and then the accounting spreadsheets and databases is a more advanced Excel class. Both of those are being offered. What else? Government and nonprofit as well. We got several sections of that. If you need accounting cycle, that's being offered. That also is only an online class. All the principles classes, of course, Print 1, Print 2. If you haven't taken those, since there's no prerequisite for this class, it's possible you haven't taken Principles 1 or 2 yet. So that's also being offered, lots of sections of that. And then accounting professionalism is offered. Will Bond teaches that in the spring. I teach it in the fall. But yeah, so those are the accounting classes. If you have any questions about any of the classes, I'm happy to address those, or of course talk to your advisor as well. Kent Spiller's probably the advisor for most of you if you're based here in Ankeny, but we've got accounting advisor down in Urban as well. So, any questions about that? I would suggest to, even if you're not sure, if you're 100% sure if you're going to take a class, but you think you might, register for it. For a couple of reasons. Number one, well, actually 3 reasons. Number one, the classes open up to non-return, or students who are new students, and then also guest students. Maybe they're Iowa State students, or they're going to some other university and are choosing to take some of their requirements through DMAC rather than their home university. That opens up, let's see, when does that open up? I think it's the 19th. Let me see. I think it's the 19th, yeah. So right now you've got a head start on those students for getting a spot. Also, a lot of our classes fill up really quick, and so you want to make sure that you've got a space in that class. We also have classes though that sometimes students say, oh, well, I'm going to register for it, and they wait and they wait and they wait, and then it turns out too many people have waited and we cancel the class, and then they're like, oh, I was going to take that class, I was going to register for it, and then it's been removed from the schedule. So make sure, even if you're just thinking about it, because you can always drop it later, you don't have to pay anything at this point, but register. If it's a class you think you're going to want to take, I encourage you to go ahead and register for it so that you know you've got a spot if indeed you do decide to take that class. Okay? Any questions? I think they've got the new banner system. I've been told by other students that the registrations process is easier now. I don't know if others have experienced that or not. I've never been on that end of it, of course, but that's good. Very good. Okay. That said, let's start talking about the midterm. And I want to pull up, so here's the review folder for the midterm, and there might be some other things that I put up that I post over the weekend or before the weekend as well. If there's anything that I run across that might be helpful to you. These are the topics that are covered in the midterm. So none of these should be unfamiliar to you. You should recognize absolutely all of these items. So, and they kind of go sort of, not 100%, go in order of how we've covered them. So the first one, actually, let me make this a little bit bigger so everybody can actually see it. Laws and regulations governing payroll accounting. So remember all those laws that we talked about, the FLSA, the Family Medical Leave Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, just all of those things, those acts from Chapter 1, review those. Okay, and this is I would suggest when you're putting your, for lack of a better word, your cheat sheet together, that you can then use here, I would suggest you put something down about each of these topics. Okay, so go through, review the materials that we covered. However you want to organize that is fine, but just kind of whatever's going to trigger your memory about these particular items. So the laws and regulations, both those employment laws, the fair employment laws, remember those anti-discriminatory types of laws, the Americans with Disabilities Act, all of that stuff. You'll want to review those. The tax laws as well, so the Social Security Act, Federal Income Tax Act, Federal Unemployment Tax Act as well. Just have a understanding of what's involved with each of those. So if I say, if there's a question about, let's see, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but if I give you some sort of example of what describes the FICA, that describes FICA, and I then have a list of, is this FICA, is this social, is this federal income tax, is this FUTA? Know the difference between those. The code of ethics, remember we talked about that code of ethics as well, the APA, that's listed in your textbook. Also, that's in chapter 1. So, let's see, just kind of right off the bat. There. Yeah, so it's figure 1.1, APA Code of Ethics, that's on page 1-3. There are 8 points there. Be aware of what those are. I'm not going to ask you to recite them, but if I give you a list of certain, I give you 3 of these items, but one phrase or sentence that does not describe, that is not listed in the Code of Ethics, can you pick out which one is not there? So know that Code of Ethics. The functions of human resources versus payroll. Remember we talked about the different functions that human resources has opposed to payroll. Human resources involved in the hiring, the kind of the life cycle of an employee, right, from hiring them or posting positions, hiring individuals, getting them into the system. Payroll, of course, involved in generating the payments for them, but those two departments do work very closely together. That payroll cycle from start to finish. Now this one is, I think there was a figure in here as well about the payroll cycle. Did I see it? So, okay, so figure 1.4 is the human resources cycle, the hiring process. Let's see here. I know there was like a figure in here. Oh, there we go. Figure 1.8 describes the payroll, well, they call it the procedures in a payroll accounting system. So that payroll cycle there, recording the hours worked, computing the gross pay, completing the payroll register, and then how that information in the payroll register is then used to, it's used in the financial accounting system, it's used to prepare those quarterly reports and other reports that are issued to agencies. Payroll frequencies. So if I say to you, how many payrolls are there in a semi-weekly payroll cycle? I say semi-weekly, semi-monthly payroll cycle. Just kind of threw one at you there. Can you tell me, how many payroll cycles are there, or how many payrolls are there in that year? Okay. New hire forms and reporting, those W-4 forms, the I-9 forms, that kind of stuff. Are you able to tell me, describe to me what the I-9 form is used for, the W-4 form, what kind of information is on that. So all of those new hire types of forms. Exempt versus non-exempt employees. Remember, this is exempt from the provisions of the FLSA or not exempt from the provisions of the FLSA, and what that exactly means, right? So if for a non-exempt employee, what does that mean for that employee, right? Are they given extra protections? Are they given fewer protections? What types of protections do they have that maybe an exempt employee doesn't have, that sort of thing. Social Security Act, OASDI, and HI, or the Medicare portion of that. Know the difference. Know those acronyms as well. OASDI, FICA, Medicare, HI, all of that stuff. So be familiar with those acronyms and be able to describe how that fits into the payroll system, right? Why we need to know about the Social Security Act. Wage base, so you should be familiar at this point with the wage base for Social Security. So know what that is and what that means. additional Medicare tax, the tax rate for that additional Medicare tax, at what point does it kick in? Who pays that additional Medicare tax? Right, remember, it's just the employee that pays that additional Medicare tax, not the employer. The FLSA, focus on the FLSA. It's a very important part of payroll. What are the different protections within the FLSA? Remember, I posted lots of videos as well, so you might want to take a look at those. Again, we looked at some of them in the during class. That enterprise coverage versus individual coverage with regard to the FLSA. So what employees are covered under the FLSA? Can you distinguish between those employees who are covered because of the enterprise they work for versus those employees who are covered because of their individual duties? Okay, so keeping that distinction, being reminded of that distinction. The payroll register versus the employee earnings record, the differences between those two. Remember, the payroll register is going to have information about the entire payroll that was done that period. Employee earnings record is specific to each employee. Okay. Also, what those forms are used for. Why would we fill those out, and what would we use them for? 941 form. Review the payment requirements. So remember the schedule for payment of those payroll taxes. We've got quarterly payments, we've got monthly payments, we've got those semi-weekly payments, and then the next day requirement for payments of those payroll taxes, as well as the filing requirements then of the 941 form. So when do we need to file those forms? When are they due? SECA tax rates for self-employed individuals. Okay. Independent contractors versus employees. So think about whether remember we looked at those facts and circumstances and the aspects of control, behavioral control, financial control, kind of review that in order to be able to distinguish between whether someone's an independent contractor or an employee. Minimum wage, federal minimum wage, as well as minimum wage for tipped employees, which is interesting. I'll try and see if I can find it. There's an article in the New York Times today about how, there's a movement to do away with that tip credit, to force employers to pay at the minimum wage, the regular minimum wage, because a lot of employers are not making up the difference. When tipped employees don't meet that minimum wage, apparently a lot of employers are not paying extra to get them up to the minimum wage for that particular pay period. So there's a lot of abuse of that. So I'll pull that up here in a second if you guys are interested in looking at it. But and the fact that there are different local minimum wages, local and state minimum wages as well, not just the federal, and which one prevails in that case, and then tip income as well, and reporting for that tip income. Okay. Are there questions about any of these topics? Anything you want to go over again? Anything you want to focus on? I'm also open to helping with homework problems as well. So let me pull up, in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, let me pull up, see if I can find that article. Here we go. I'm gonna read this together. Come on. Yes. Did you guys know you can get a free New York Times subscription through DMAC? You can also get a free Des Moines Register subscription as well through DMAC. So if you didn't know that, you have to use your DMAC email address in order to get that. I think through the library there's a link to. I'm on the library page. There's a link to get those. So Just FYI. So with Americans resuming pandemic habits of going out, eating out, and traveling, leisure and hospitality businesses have scrambled to hire, sometimes offering pay increases that outpace inflation. Imagine that. But for many whose pay is linked to tips, like restaurant servers and bartenders, base wages remain low. Collecting what is owed under the law can be a struggle. In all but 8 states, employers can legally choose to pay workers who receive tips a sub-minimum wage, in some places as low as $2.13 an hour. We're all familiar with that. As long as tips bring their earnings to the equivalent of the minimum wage in a pay period. That tip credit. Economists estimate that at least 5.5 million workers are paid on that basis. The provision, known as the tip credit, is a unique industry subsidy that lets employers meet pay requirements more cheaply. And even in a tight labor market, it is often abused at the employee's expense, according to workers, labor lawyers, many regulators, and economists. It's baked into the model, said David Weil, the administrator of the Wage and Hour Division of the Labor Department under President Barack Obama, referring to the frequency of violations, and it's very problematic. Terrence Rice, a bartender from Cleveland, who has worked in the bar and restaurant industry since 1999, chuckled at the notion that the law is consistently followed. As long as I've been doing this, I have never, ever, not one time, met anyone that's been compensated for a below minimum pay period. He said, adding that slow weeks with inadequate pay are viewed as the feast or famine norm in the industry. Busier seasons, weekends, or shifts can bring a rush of cash, followed by slow weekdays, bad weather weeks, or economic turbulence. Now the years-long arrangement is coming under increasing challenge. In the District of Columbia, a measure on the November ballot would ban the sub-minimum wage by 2027. A ballot proposal in Portland, Maine would ban sub-minimum base pay and bring the regular minimum wage to $18 an hour over 3 years. Employers in Michigan are bracing for increased expenses in February, when the state tipped minimum of $3.75 an hour is set to be discontinued, and the regular state minimum wage will rise to $12 from $9.87. Xander Gudeko, district manager for Main Street Ventures Restaurant Group, which owns spots throughout Michigan, offered a common view in the local business community. When I think of the potential positives for us, I can't really think of anything. Though tipped employees can include hotel housekeepers, bellhops, car washers, and airport wheelchair escorts, most are in food and beverage service jobs. Perfect compliance may involve a complex dance of having workers clock in at the minimum wage rate for setup work until opening, clock out, then clock back in at a tipped wage. Businesses using the 2-tier system are prohibited from having tipped employees spend more than 20% of their shifts on side work like rolling silverware or cleaning. They also cannot include back-of-the-house employees like kitchen workers in tip pooling, the collection and redistribution of all gratuities at a certain rate, usually set by the employer. The last robust compliance investigation of full-service restaurants by the Labor Department is somewhat dated, having ended in 2012. But it found that 83.8% of the examined firms were in violation of labor law, with a large share of the infractions related to tips. National Restaurant Association, which represents over 500,000 small and larger restaurants, argues that instances of illegal underpayment of tipped workers are overstated, and that workers, customers, and employers in general find the system workable. There's a reason people choose tipped restaurant jobs. They know the economics are in their favor, said Sean Kennedy, Group's Executive Vice President of Public Affairs. For many servers, they've chosen restaurants as a career because their industry skills and knowledge mean high earning potential in a job that's flexible to their needs. Ryan Steigar, a labor lawyer and managing partner at Centurion Trial Attorneys, whose practice mostly represents workers in wage theft cases but also defends businesses accused of violations, called the network of laws surrounding tipped workers so bizarre and obscure that employers acting in good faith can still make legal mistakes. Even when the law is followed to the letter, Mr. Steiger said, the system is unfair to workers. You're sacrificing your tips to meet the employer's minimum wage obligations, he said. Employers are required to keep records of tips and usually do so through a mix of their own accounting, credit card receipts, and self-reporting from staff members. Most involved in the system say the tracking works in murky ways. In reality, who's monitoring this complex two-tier system, says Sylvian Allegretto, former chair of the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics at the University of California, Berkeley. The onus is on you, the worker, to possibly enrage or at least annoy your boss, who also, coincidentally, controls your schedule, she said. In many civil rights disputes, employment attorneys have successfully argued before courts that managers implicitly wield opportunities to work more lucrative shifts as a carrot for not rocking the boat on workplace abuse and as a stick to prevent retaliation. Sylvia Gaston, a waitress at a restaurant in Estonia, Queens, said her base wage is $7.50 an hour, even though New York City's legal subminimum is $10, which must come to at least $15 after tips. Ms. Gaston, 40, who is from Mexico, feels that undocumented workers like herself have a harder time fighting back when they are shortchanged. It doesn't really matter if you have documents or not. I think folks are still getting underpaid in general. However, when it comes to uplifting your voices and speaking out, the folks who can get a little bit more harsh repercussions are people who are undocumented. Subminimum base pay for some tipped workers in the state, such as car washers, hairdressers, and nail salon employees, was abolished in 2019 under an executive order by Andrew Cuomo. But workers in the food and drinks industry were left out. Governor Kathy Hochul, Mr. Cuomo's successor, said while Lieutenant Governor in 2020 that she supported a solid full wage for restaurant workers, and progressive legislators plan a bill in January that would eliminate the two-tier wage system by the end of 2025. When the New York Times asked if she would support such changes, Ms. Hochul's office did not answer directly. We are always exploring the best ways to provide support to service workers. Proponents of abandoning sub-minimum wages say there could be advantages for employers, including less turnover, better service, and higher morale. David Cooper, director of Economic Analysis and Research Network at the Economic Policy Institute, progressive think tank, contends that when wage laws are changed to a single-tier system, business owners can have assurance that every single person they compete with is making the exact same adjustment, reducing the specter of a competitive disadvantage. Still, he acknowledged there would be downsides. Restaurants and bars with less popularity and lower productivity could lose out in a substantially higher wage environment, leading to higher prices and potential closings. This is not costless, Mr. Cooper said, but for a time, we haven't been internalizing the cost of paying workers less than they can live on. Some employers who use the two-tier wage system are taking a different approach. Talia Sala, 33, is a training manager at Illegal Pete's, a burrito spot founded in Boulder, Colorado, with locations throughout Arizona and Colorado. Those states have a sub-minimum wage under $10 an hour for tipped workers and a regular minimum under $13. Illegal Pete's offers starting pay of $15 plus tips, as well as health care coverage. Before rising to her current position, Ms. Sella was hired as a server and trained as a bartender in 2016. She was previously making base pay of $5 an hour elsewhere as a waitress and hostess, unable to afford a car and biking to the bus stop in snow to make winter shifts. Even at what her company is paying, Ms. Sella said, recruiting and hiring are more challenging than ever because of labor shortages. But she said the businesses, with the help of a recent 10% price increase, remained profitable and was able to expand despite soaring food costs. She attributes this in part to out-vibing the competition. Having work be a stable part of your life, where it's like you go there, you're getting paid a living wage, you have health insurance, you know this place cares about you, then you're more likely to show up to work and give your best. If you want people to give more of themselves, more of their time, more of their effort, then you have to be willing to invest more of your company into the individual people as well. So, just thought that was kind of interesting. What are your thoughts on that as I was reading through? Anybody have any thoughts or opinions on that? What do you think would happen if they raised the minimum wage for tipped employees to the same minimum wages for other jobs?
You have to raise the other minimum wage, because then those people, if they're like the tipped employees, if they have a lower, like we're gonna say like lower wage,
Yeah.
So then people who don't get tips will maybe find jobs that they will get tips and still get paid that much, so they get paid more overall.
That's a good point. Absolutely. So it's might create an environment where now the dishwashers are a little ticked off because now, you know, why aren't they getting to participate in that? Yeah, good point. Anything else you guys can think of? Would you continue to leave tips?
Can I see the date on the article?
The date on the article?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in today's, October 13th.
because I just hadn't heard the name Andrew Cuomo in so long. I was just wondering when the article came from.
Oh, well, and they were referring to him as previous governor, Andrew Cuomo. Would you still leave tips? Would you leave as much?
I mean, I'd probably still leave the same amount because I just feel like if I don't, it feel rude to the people who are working.
Okay. Do you think most people would if they knew they were? So if a server's making $18 an hour, and you go in, you're a bookkeeper and you're making $15 an hour. Right? Kind of creates some interesting dynamics, isn't it? Any other thoughts or observations? No?
I mean, there are people who hardly tip now. Like, I'm a server.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But, like, raising the minimum wage, honestly, my bartenders and my other servers, we average between 25 to 35 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just on tips.
Right.
If they change that and take away the tips, people now are like, no, we're not gonna pay them that. Like, I know people who refuse to tip servers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know, if they've raised the minimum wage, I feel like everybody's just gonna stop.
Stop tipping altogether if they know that. Yeah. So then you're here. They're trying to help servers by increasing making it more fair, but then you may have this unintended consequence of actually lowering their hourly wage because the tips then dry up. Right? And of course, we usually leave a tip based on a percentage of the tab, right? And anybody who's gone out to eat recently knows that the prices on the menu have increased substantially. You know, dinners that I think of we go to a Mexican restaurant up in Ames quite frequently, and the meals that used to be $10.95 are now $16.95. Well, if you're leaving a percentage on that, then automatically the server has gotten a raise because of the increased price on the menu. Now, I'm sure that there are people out there that have decreased the amount that they're leaving as tips to try and offset that increased price on the menu. But yeah, anyway, just interesting. I can post a link to this online if you guys are interested at all in reading it. But I thought I would bring that to your attention. So let's go back to the midterm. Do you have questions about any of these topics? Think you got a pretty good grasp on them? Everything rings a bell? Like, oh yeah, that's right. We talked about that code of ethics. It was a long time ago, but yep. Any questions about the homework then? Do you have any specific questions? Any problems you'd like to go through? Yeah.
Can we go through overtime earnings on number 70?
Overtime earnings, you bet. Let's pull this up. Oops. Go away. Gleason Brewing Company. Make this a little bit bigger here. Let's see if this works. Here we go. Gleason Brewing Company, office workers employed for a 40-hour work week, quoted either a monthly or an annual salary. Given on the form, the current annual and monthly salary rates for 5 office workers. For the 50th pay, okay, so they're paid weekly. In addition, with this pay, these employees are paid their sliding scale annual bonuses. Bonuses are listed on the register. All right. For each worker, compute the following. Round your answers to the nearest cent. So is there one worker in particular?
The overtime one, like,
Which one is? Oh, this
Yep.
one right here. Okay, so Mac. All right, so 3,400. Let's see. Alright, so it's on a weekly basis, so we're gonna figure out. So 3,400 times 12 divided by 52. So 781.62.
actually 784.
I'm sorry, 784.62 plus the 8,000, right?
Yep.
So 87.84.62. Okay, so worked 6 hours of overtime, and I guess we're assuming. I have to make some assumptions here, I think. Doesn't really say whether it's a discretionary bonus or not. Okay. So we've got to figure out on an hourly basis then what this employee made. Now, they're not saying whether this is, I guess it's an annual bonus. So we're including the bonus in the hourly rate. Let's figure our regular hourly rate. So 784.62. So when do we need to round? Round your answers, okay. Two divided by 40 hours would be a regular rate of 19.62 per hour. That would be for the regular, if we were just doing it based on the normal rate, so. Times. So 29.42 would be the overtime rate. Okay, so I'm gonna do this a couple of ways because they didn't really give you enough information to know whether that bonus is included or not. So 29.42 times 6 hours. Do it this way first. 176.54. So total earnings, we would add those together. 87.62. 89. 61.16. No. Okay. So
I got 176.58.
0.58.
Yep.
Okay. So let's see if that makes any difference there. Just on that one. Yeah, okay. Gotcha. So the 87.84.62.
I think that's actually supposed to be 784.62 because
They're not including the,
They're not including.
the 8th, okay, I thought they were including is that, okay, that makes sense, so this is just a math issue. Right. So then we're gonna add the 8,000 onto that, so 8,000 plus 784.62 plus 136.8, 8961.20. There we go. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions? Different problems? Are you progressing on the homework?
I have a
Yeah.
91, so.
You're what's that?
I have a 91 so far,
Okay,
so.
good. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Could we do one more of the actions of sense?
Of the fractions of cents, yeah, do you have a number for me? A problem number?
67.
67. Oh. During the third quarter calendar, Beech Tree Inn, owned by Don Smedley, employed persons listed below. Also given are the employee salaries or wages and the amount of tips reported to the owner. Tips were reported by the 10th of each month. Federal income tax and FICA to be withheld from the tips were estimated by the owner and withheld equally. Is this the one that you're, okay, over the 13 weekly pay periods. Employer's portion of FICA tax on the tips was estimated as the same amount. All right, so employees are paid weekly on Friday. Oh, this is the 941, filling out the 941? Okay, so we're just gonna enter this information in here. So let's see, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 employees. Now let's make this a bit smaller. There we go. Wages, tips, and other compensation. So we had, excuse me, wages and then the tips. We gotta add those two together. So. $32,053.30. Federal income tax withheld, they've given us that. Federal income tax withheld, FIT, abbreviation 8216. All right. Taxable Social Security wages. So now we're just gonna include the wages here. 117,975. Then we're gonna add in the taxable Social Security tips down here on line 5B, which is the 14,078.30. Medicare wages and tips, we put that on the same line. We add those two together. Okay. So now we do the math. So 14,620, is that 90? No. 14,078.30 times 0.124, 1745.71. And then 132,053.3 times 0.029. This is Medicare tax. 3829.55. Total Social Security and Medicare taxes, we're gonna add all of these together. Oops. $22,0416. total taxes before any adjustments, so now we're gonna add line 3 and line 5. Plus 28 for 2016. Alright, so now we've gotta figure out how much the liability was each quarter. So they had 5 paydays in July. So this is where, let's see, do they give you the, yeah. Now we gotta go over here. So federal income tax, $632 per week. Weekly taxes withheld on wages and on tips. Okay, so we gotta add all of these together. Oops, sorry. Let's see those numbers there. So 632 plus. $2186.19 per pay period. Did I get that right? And in July, we had 5 pay periods. So we need to multiply that by 5 for July. So 10, 9, 30, 95. For July. For the other 2 months, we had 4 pay periods. So 21, 86, 19, for 87, 44, 76. 87, 44, 76. 87, 44, 76. All right, add those together. $28,420, 47. $27, 47. That's a big difference there. Do I have that 47 right? Let's see. So 28, 420, 47, we're gonna have to add. What's the difference between? So 31 cents. Tax after adjustments. Put that in there. Total deposits were 28, 420, 47. Total deposits and refundable credits, 28, 420, 47. Total deposits and refundable credits plus advances, 7. Nothing there. Hopefully I got this right. Where's my check your work? Bless you. So those are right. You can actually see it. Okay, so they put the tips for Social Security. The Social Security tips and Social Security wages are separated on the form, but Medicare tips and wages are combined together. Okay, so that's why this amount is separate for Social Security purposes, but not for Medicare purposes, and not for federal income tax purposes either. Okay, did that answer your question about that? I think you had maybe one more problem where you had some tips, at least one more problem. Other questions? Yeah.
Can you go over, on number 2, the hospital insurance overview, the very last one, the supplemental withholding for the period?
Okay, you gotta speak up just a little bit.
Number 2, on the hospital insurance overview, the very last one on part C, the supplemental withholding for the pay period.
This one here?
Yeah, the last one, the supplemental withholding.
Okay. Okay, so the supplemental withholding is going to be that additional Medicare tax. All right, so Nazer has current wages of $15,000 and year-to-date earnings of $200,000, which means, and year-to-date meaning up to this pay period, assuming, up to this pay period, he hasn't had any additional Medicare tax imposed, right? Because he's still under that $200,000. But in this pay period, it pushes him over that $200,000. So the $15,000 would all be subject to the additional Medicare tax. 009 is the percentage. So 135. Is it possible that you multiplied it by 9% instead of 0.9%?
No, I was, adding 4,000 onto the 15,000. From the additional number that I got.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. There's that one. Any others?
Can we do the number 70 OASDI under FICA taxable wages this pay period?
This one here?
No,
Or-
you'll have to scroll to the right a little.
Oh.
It's the one on top, the 1H or whatever.
Okay. All right, so in order to get that, let's see, so this is December, salary is $99,840, annual bonus, okay, so this 13th. So this is the 50th pay period of the year. So up to now, let's figure out what he's made up to now. 99,840 divided by 52, 1920 times 49 pays. So he's been paid $94,080 up to now. Okay, let's pull up the, I'm gonna access the, well, I think I put it under here, chapter 3 as well. Otherwise, minus the prior period year-to-date salary. So this pay period over here. Okay, so prior period was 94,080. pay period, so he would still have, let's see, 142, just to see, minus 94,080, 7, 3, 8, 13. He would still have $48,720 of earnings to go until he reaches that wage base, right?
Yep.
Okay, so in this pay period, he has earned, let's see, so he gets, what was it per pay period? So 9, 840, 52, so he gets 1920 a week, is that right?
Yep.
Do I have that right? Did you get that right? 99,840 divided by 52. Yep, 1920 per week. Plus 55,000. Okay, so now he's made in this pay period 56,920, right? Current pay period. I'm gonna add those together. Now he's at 151,000. Right, so we know that it's during this pay period that he starts to exceed that Social Security wage base, right? Okay, so now we need to figure out how much of this 56,920 is going to be subject to Social Security tax. How much of this gets him up to 142,800, right? So a couple ways we can do that. My mind right now, 142,800. Let's subtract that. So 0, 200, 10, 8,200 of that 56,920 is not subject. That's the amount that's over and above that 142,800, right? All right, so we know that much isn't subject to. So let's figure out the difference here to find out what is subject to Social Security. 56,920 minus the 8,200. So 48,720 is subject to Social Security.
Yep, I got that.
Okay, that's the same as what you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's put his stuff in. So his regular earnings, whoops, 20. Total earnings, 56,920. FICA taxable wages this pay period. Okay, so 48,720.
Yep.
56,920. FICA taxes to be withheld. So 48,720 times 0.062. 30,2064. So you're gonna multiply it by 6.2%.
Yep.
Okay, and then 56,920 times 0.0145, 825.34.
Yep, that's what I got.
That's what you got? And they're telling you it's wrong?
No,
Oh.
but it's correct. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay. All right. Is that the one you had a question on, though?
That's just the OASDI under the FICA taxable wages this pay period. That's just the only question I had.
Oh, the 48,720?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. You got this answer, but you didn't know what that was?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, you said you got it, I'm just curious, you got it right, because in order to do this, you've got to know what the OASDI is.
Yeah,
Or maybe you
that's-
didn't, okay, you didn't have that part as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't.
gotcha, sorry, I misunderstood. Other questions? No? All right, so the midterm, again, you will, unless you've already made arrangements with me to take it in the testing center, it will be taken here in class. It's not a take it on your own type of exam. So you will be taking it here. On Tuesday, you'll have the full class period to work on it. If you finish early, you'll be welcome to leave. If you need the entire time though to work on it, you have the entire class period. You've got that one sheet of paper, front and back, of notes. Like I said, I would use my list there as kind of a guide as to what you might want to include on that, including, you know, if you're not real confident on remembering some of those tax rates, like the Social Security and Medicare tax rates, the wage base, the additional Medicare, all that stuff, I'd write that stuff down. No books though for the exam. You are allowed a sheet of scratch paper. No cell phones, just a simple calculator, or you can use the calculator that's on your computer as well. Yeah.
Okay, so is the midterm like kind of formatted kind of like a homework assignment, or more like the exams that we've been taking now?
It is, I mean, kind of a combination of the two, but more like the assessments, where it's multiple choice. They are multiple choice. I think if I recall, there might be an extra credit problem or two, but that's not to say that you don't have any calculations.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I just want to know if it was like this where we had to like break down every single thing and like type in each number and
No.
final.
Nope. Nope. If there's a problem though that asks you to enter how you got to that conclusion, then you'll want to do that. But you're not going to be spending the whole period just trying to get it all in. Okay. And it's more overview than specific kinds of questions. I want to know that you at a 30,000 foot level understand the materials that we have covered. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how many questions there are?
I can. I have to turn this off though. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 50. I don't remember specifically. Let's see. It's 35 questions. Multiple choice and true false. There are two extra credit questions at the end that do involve calculations, and in those questions I want you to write out what your calculation was. You won't get full credit if you don't write out your calculation. Okay. And there, I mean, you have to type in what the answer is anyway. So that one's not multiple choice. Those aren't multiple choice or true false. questions. What was that? Let's see, 35. The 35 questions includes the 2 multiple choice. So it's 33 questions for the test, 2 multiple choice questions. Anything else? Yeah.
Is the test on the computer?
Yes, it's through Blackboard. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this might sound silly, but we're not allowed to like copy and paste for the answers, right?
Copy and paste. Oh, you mean for like? No, just just type right into Blackboard. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean like, for example, if Avery Tavalli earnings date to date of 70,000 and current wages of 1,000, we're not allowed to like copy and paste for the answer, right? I mean, I know that sounds silly, but
I guess I still don't understand the question.
They're multiple choice, so.
Yeah, they're multiple choice, so you'll be for the extra credit ones though. There won't be a need to copy and paste anything. And the multiple choice, of course, you just enter it. You choose A, B, C, D, E for that. So
okay.
does that make sense?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, you guys are free to go. Chat a little bit early here. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. I know there are a couple of you that I have to respond to. Had a couple of questions. Kim, did I answer your question on that, or I guess I didn't understand your what exactly you were asking?
So, hold on. So, for example, type in a random question here. So, for example, if one of the questions are this, what is the OASDI tax? We can't like try to Google the answer, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
It's just, and then the test length is just normal class.
Mhm. Yep.
I
Yep.
have accommodations, but might not need it, I don't know.
For
I do have extra time and a half.
okay.
But-
If you, I mean, there are a couple other students that do as well, and they're going to take it in the testing center. So if you
Are they gonna do it before class? or
want, I
whatever?
just told them they needed to do it that day. So you
Okay.
wouldn't come in here then.
Yeah, then I can do it after, yeah, about the same
So-
time
Mhm.
during that, okay.
Yeah, so you could, if you want me to tell the testing center that you're gonna be,
I'd do that.
okay,
So,
all right.
do you
I'll
need
put
me to
you
fill
on.
out paper or anything?
Nope, I'll take
Okay.
care of it.
Yep. So
Okay.
time and a half is how I have it set for
Yep.
things, so.
Yep.
yeah.
For registrations, do you know if ACC 315 is available this semester?
Is that Sage?
Sage.
I don't think it is. If you're gonna have to replace that with something else, cause I know we took that off, cause it wasn't being supported anymore. Like we couldn't get textbooks for it, we couldn't get, yeah, it was just gone. Yeah, there's no 315. So talk to Kent, if he's your advisor, about replacing that with another class.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
I just wanted to make sure you remember I'm home.
Yep, yep. I gotcha.
So my current agreement is that I would pay for GMAC, and then they would help me pay for